The air was thick with tension, heavy with the sound of the jungle around them. On the war-torn planet of Realm, a small but powerful resistance base lay hidden in the dense forest, its location known only to a select few. The world had been ravaged by alien invaders for years, but Earth's fightback had only just begun. A squad of elite alien soldiers, led by Commander Vorsk, was on a mission to wipe out the resistance once and for all. These were not ordinary soldiers. They were part of the Xorlian Empire, known across the galaxy for their advanced technology, fearsome power, and ruthless tactics. With their cloaking devices activated, the alien soldiers moved silently through the jungle. Their footsteps were barely a whisper, their bodies invisible to the naked eye. They felt confident, unshakable. Their technology was far superior to anything the humans had, and they believed their mission would be an easy one. They didn't expect any resistance. After all, who could challenge the might of the Xorlian Empire? But they underestimated something they didn't even know existed: a human sniper. The squad advanced cautiously, their sensors scanning the surroundings for any signs of life. It was a perfect ambush zone, the dense jungle providing cover for the enemy to hide. The air was eerily silent, save for the distant chirping of strange alien birds and the occasional rustle of the wind through the trees. The squad's commander, Vorsk, gave a slight nod, signaling the team to proceed. They were closing in on the base. Then, without warning, it happened. A single shot rang out, breaking the silence like thunder. The shot was so precise, so swift, that it caught one of the alien soldiers off guard. He dropped to the ground with a violent thud, lifeless before he even hit the dirt. The other soldiers froze. For a split second, everything seemed to stop. No one knew where the shot had come from. There was no sign of the sniper, no movement from the jungle, just a fallen soldier. The entire squad went into alert mode, panic creeping into their movements. They began searching the area frantically, scanning for any sign of the enemy. But they couldn't see anything. The jungle, thick with foliage, offered no clues. There were no footprints, no sounds, nothing. Just the lifeless body of their comrade lying in the mud. Commander Vorsk's mind raced. He had heard the rumors, the stories whispered among the ranks. Tales of a human sniper, someone who could kill without ever being seen. A legend, they called him. A soldier who had taken down entire squads of alien invaders, never leaving behind a trace. The story seemed impossible. But now, standing in this jungle, Vorsk knew the rumors were true. His heart began to pound in his chest, but he quickly regained his composure. "Search the area," he commanded. "Deploy thermal scanners. We need to find him. Now." The soldiers scattered, their advanced thermal imaging devices clicking to life. Drones buzzed overhead, their sensors scanning every inch of the dense foliage, trying to find the heat signature of the sniper. The squad moved cautiously, each soldier watching every shadow, every branch that swayed. They were no longer moving like invincible conquerors. They were hunting for a ghost. Vorsk scanned the area, his mind still trying to piece together the situation. The sniper was clearly skilled, probably more than any of them had anticipated. If they didn't find him soon, they'd be sitting ducks. But no matter how hard they tried, they couldn't locate the source of the shot. The sniper was still out there, hidden in the vast expanse of the jungle. And then, just as Vorsk was about to give new orders, another shot rang out. This time, even more precise than the first. Another alien soldier dropped to the ground, his body crumpling like a ragdoll, without even a sound. Panic spread through the squad like wildfire. They had no idea how to fight back against this unseen enemy. They fired randomly into the jungle, but their bullets only cut through the trees, the shots landing nowhere near their target. Vorsk clenched his fist. The fear was starting to set in. He wasn't used to being on the defensive. For all his power and his squad's advanced technology, they had never faced anything like this. This wasn't just some random human soldier. They were up against something far more dangerous. Whoever this sniper was, he was not only skilled, but he was also terrifyingly patient. At that moment, Vorsk realized they were no longer the hunters. They were the hunted. He had underestimated the humans, and now it could cost them everything. He was leading his squad into a trap, and he needed to find a way to get out of it before it was too late. The situation grew more desperate by the second. The squad's numbers were dwindling, and still, they couldn't find the source of the attacks. The thermal scanners beeped in frustration, unable to pick up the sniper's heat signature. The drones circled above, but their sensors were blocked by the dense foliage. The squad was losing control of the situation, and panic was beginning to take hold. Vorsk's mind raced. He had to think fast. But even as he formulated a plan, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were being toyed with, played like pawns on a chessboard. The sniper knew exactly how to manipulate them, how to make them feel vulnerable, how to strike when they least expected it. And every time they thought they were getting closer, the sniper seemed to be one step ahead. The squad, once full of confidence, was now filled with doubt and fear. They were being hunted by a human, an underdog by all measures, but one whose skills far surpassed anything they had anticipated. This wasn't just a sniper, it was a legend, a human soldier who had become something more than just a man. He had become a symbol of humanity's strength, a symbol of their will to survive, no matter the cost. And still, the sniper remained silent. His presence was nothing more than a ghostly whisper in the wind, a presence that haunted the squad, unsettling them at every turn. Vorsk clenched his jaw, his eyes scanning the horizon. He had to stop this. He had to find the sniper, or they would all be dead. But the more he thought about it, the more he realized that finding this human sniper was no longer about just completing the mission. It was about survival. If they didn't stop him soon, the whole squad would be wiped out. And so, the hunt continued. The silence stretched on, heavy with the weight of impending doom. The question remained, who was this human sniper, and how would they survive the relentless pursuit of an enemy they couldn't even see? The tension was unbearable. The story had only just begun. The dense jungle continued to pulse with tension as the alien squad, once so confident, now moved with an air of desperation. Their every step was cautious, calculated, as they searched for the human sniper who had already claimed two of their own. The heat of the day seemed to press down upon them, but it wasn't the weather that made them sweat. It was the feeling of being hunted, and their worst fear was becoming a reality. In the midst of the chaos and confusion, the camera of a high-tech drone flickered to life on the edge of the jungle. Its thermal sensors scanned the surrounding foliage, trying in vain to locate the source of the elusive shots. But the sniper was gone, his presence like a whisper in the wind, impossible to track. Behind the scenes, a lone figure was watching the entire scenario unfold with cold, calculated eyes. The human sniper had made his move, and now he was waiting for the next shot. Sergeant Daniel Cross had been in this situation countless times before, though he never stopped feeling the tension. His hands gripped the advanced sniper rifle in front of him, the sleek weapon designed to be virtually invisible to alien detection systems. He was not just a soldier anymore. He had become something more, a force of nature. He had become the legend that the alien forces now feared. Daniel Cross was no ordinary human. He had been a soldier for most of his life, fighting on Earth's front lines against the alien invaders. But that was before the attack on his home, before the alien invasion had destroyed everything he held dear. A flashback tugged at his mind, taking him back to that terrible day. He remembered the bright, sunny day that turned into a nightmare as alien ships filled the sky, casting shadows over the once peaceful Earth. His family, his wife, and young daughter, had been in the heart of the city when the attack came. He couldn't protect them in time. By the time he got there, it was too late. The alien forces had already ravaged his home, and there was nothing left but ashes and silence. The pain of that day had never left him. That loss, that unimaginable grief, had transformed him. He became a shadow of his former self, driven by a singular purpose: vengeance. He would hunt down every alien who dared to harm humanity, no matter the cost. And he would do it alone. Now, equipped with the latest technology, cloaking devices, and an AI system designed to assist him in targeting and strategic planning, Sergeant Cross was a one-man army. His eye, a hyper-intelligent system named Echo, helped him map out enemy positions, calculate angles, and even predict the aliens' next moves. It was as if he could see through the enemy's eyes, anticipate their thoughts. The combination of his tactical brilliance and Echo's advanced calculations made him nearly unstoppable. As the alien squad continued their desperate search, they failed to notice the small details: the slight shift of the leaves, the whisper of a movement in the trees. Daniel Cross was always one step ahead, silently moving from one position to the next. His cloaking device rendered him nearly invisible, even to their advanced thermal scanners. He was a ghost in the jungle, a predator whose every move was calculated to strike fear into the hearts of his enemies. Meanwhile, the Xorlian squad's frustration continued to mount. They had already lost 2 soldiers, and now Commander Vorsk's patience was wearing thin. The sniper's tactics were flawless, nothing like anything they had encountered before. Every move the squad made, the sniper was right there, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. "Deploy more drones," Vorsk ordered sharply, his voice a low growl. "We need to find him. Now, use the ground sensors, scan everything." The soldiers followed orders, launching additional drones into the air. They swept through the jungle, scanning every possible hiding spot, every inch of the dense undergrowth. But the sniper was already long gone by the time the drones passed overhead. His technology outmatched theirs at every turn, and his knowledge of the terrain was unrivaled. He had the advantage, and he knew it. Cross was never in one place for too long. He was like a storm, hitting hard and fast, before disappearing into the night. His targets were always precise, each shot calculated to eliminate the most immediate threat. His mind worked like a machine, but it was powered by something more primal: the need for revenge, the thirst for justice that only he could quench. The aliens grew more desperate as their search intensified. They had been hunting this human sniper for hours, yet they were no closer to finding him. Each movement they made was anticipated, each strategy countered before they even had the chance to execute it. The sniper was always one step ahead, and they couldn't understand how. Commander Vorsk's frustration boiled over. There must be a way to find him. He snapped, glaring at his soldiers. He had faced enemies before, powerful, dangerous enemies, but none like this. He had never faced a human sniper of this caliber. The Xorlian Empire had conquered dozens of planets, but this was something else entirely. He had to find a way to outsmart this human or face total defeat. The longer they spent in the jungle, the more the Xorlian squad felt the creeping sense of inevitability. They were being hunted, and every second they remained in the open made them more vulnerable. The fear started to take hold, even among the most battle-hardened of them. They had underestimated the humans, and now they were paying the price. In the distance, Sergeant Cross was watching it all unfold. He saw the fear in their movements, the hesitation in their steps. He knew it was only a matter of time before they made a mistake. He was patient. He had learned to be over the years. His training and his pain had taught him to wait for the right moment, to make every shot count. Echo, the AI system, spoke to him through his earpiece, its voice calm and analytical. Target lock achieved. Distance, 800 meters. 1 alien soldier, no cover. Daniel's finger hovered over the trigger. He could see the alien soldier through the scope, standing alone in the clearing, unaware of the danger that was closing in on him. It was almost too easy, but Cross didn't care. This wasn't about ease. It was about justice. With a steady breath, he squeezed the trigger. The shot rang out, precise, powerful, and the alien soldier fell. The remaining Xorlian soldiers froze. the fear palpable. Another one down. The legend of the human sniper had become a nightmare for them. Commander Vorsk's eyes narrowed in frustration. "Enough," he roared. "We will not be defeated by a mere human. Search every inch of this jungle. Find him now." But Vorsk didn't realize the truth. The more they searched, the more they were walking into his trap. Sergeant Cross was always a step ahead, his mind a sharp blade cutting through their every plan. And with every failed attempt to find him, the legend of the human sniper only grew stronger. The hunt was far from over. But for the Xorlian squad, the worst was yet to come. The sniper wasn't just targeting them, he was dismantling their pride. The jungle was still, the heavy scent of rain in the air, and the distant hum of alien drones was the only sound that broke the silence. Sergeant Daniel Cross was once again invisible, his cloaking device making him blend seamlessly into his surroundings. He had become a shadow in the war-torn landscape, a silent predator. The alien squad had no idea where he was or what was coming next. They had been outwitted, outmaneuvered, and outplayed. But Cross was far from done. He knew the aliens would never give up. They were relentless, and their advanced technology made them dangerous. But Daniel had something they didn't, a connection to the Earth he fought to protect, and an indomitable will forged through loss. And with that, he was ready to continue his one-man war. With a steady hand, Daniel scanned the jungle through his high-tech sniper scope, watching every alien movement below. The squad had split up, a tactical mistake, but one that had played right into his hands. His breath was slow, calculated, and steady as he tracked the alien soldiers one by one. He had all the time in the world to make each shot count. The first alien soldier, a towering figure with advanced armor, was crossing an open patch of land. Daniel adjusted his position, the scope following the soldier's every step. With a soft click of the rifle's trigger, the shot rang out. The alien soldier crumpled to the ground without a sound, dropping instantly, his life snuffed out by Daniel's precision. The jungle, still and silent once more, seemed to hold its breath. The rest of the alien squad scattered in panic, looking for any sign of where the sniper might be. They had underestimated him, and now they were paying the price. But Daniel wasn't finished. The squad had grown more cautious after the first kill, moving slowly and methodically through the dense undergrowth. They knew they were being hunted, but they couldn't find the hunter. Daniel, with his technology, his AI system Echo, and his years of training, continued to outsmart them at every turn. One by one, the aliens fell. Each shot was precise, calculated. But Daniel's mind wasn't just focused on the aliens. It was on something deeper. It was a personal vendetta, a need to avenge the family he lost all those years ago. His next target was a younger soldier, one who hadn't been on the front lines for long. Bonner, a fresh recruit in the Xorlian army, had only recently joined the invasion force. He wasn't like the others, hardened by years of battle. Bonner was still learning the ropes, still trying to prove himself. But what he didn't know was that he was about to become the sniper's next target. As Bonner made his way through the jungle, he stopped for a moment, looking around with uncertainty. The weight of the invasion was beginning to weigh heavily on him. He had heard stories of the atrocities the Xorlian Empire had committed, the planets they had conquered, the civilizations they had destroyed. But none of it had prepared him for what he was now experiencing. The faces of the people they had killed haunted him, and he found himself wondering if he was truly on the right side of this war. His thoughts were interrupted by the sharp, echoing crack of a distant rifle shot. Bonner's heart skipped a beat as the realization hit him. He was being hunted. And from the way the others were moving, they too felt it. They were no longer in control. They were no longer the predators. Bonner's eyes darted around, searching the trees, the shadows, looking for any sign of the sniper. His breath quickened as fear took root. He couldn't see him. He couldn't hear him. But the sniper was out there, and Bonner knew it. It wasn't just the fear of death that gripped him. It was the fear of what he had become. His eyes flicked over to the rest of the squad, but even they seemed to be shaking now. They were all in this together, yet they were all completely alone. The jungle had swallowed them, and no one could help them. Daniel's scope once again locked onto Bonner. The young soldier was vulnerable, but there was something different about him. Something that made Daniel hesitate, just for a moment. In the briefest instant, Daniel saw the flicker of fear in Bonner's eyes. He wasn't the cold, heartless soldier the rest of the Xorlian forces were. He was just a young man, thrust into a war that wasn't his to fight. But then, Daniel remembered why he was here. This was war. And Bonner, like the rest, was the enemy. Daniel squeezed the trigger. The shot rang out. Bonner stumbled, falling to his knees. The alien soldier's hand reached out, grasping the air as he gasped for breath. Blood spilling from the wound. His life was slipping away. And with his death, so too did the last bit of humanity he had. But as Bonner's body hit the ground, Daniel's heart remained cold. He had no time to mourn. The war wasn't over. He couldn't afford to feel sympathy for the enemy. He had a mission, and he had to finish it. As Bonner's life faded away, the alien squad realized the full extent of their failure. The sniper wasn't just taking them down with ease. He was toying with them. They were the prey in his game, but no one had been prepared for this. No one had anticipated a human soldier who could fight back with such deadly skill. The aliens were getting desperate now. Commander Vorsk had seen enough. His mind raced as he considered the next move. They had to stop the sniper, or they would lose everything. His gaze flicked over to the remaining soldiers. Activate the robots. We can't afford to fail. Let's see if he can handle them. The order was clear. It was time to bring in the robots. The ground beneath Daniel's feet began to vibrate as the drones and AI-controlled robots moved into position. Their mechanical limbs hissed as they activated, their glowing red eyes scanning the jungle. These machines were designed for close-quarters combat. They were powerful, armed with lasers and plasma cannons, and they had one purpose: to take down the human sniper. Daniel's heart beat faster. The game had changed. He moved swiftly, staying in the shadows as the robots began to fan out in search of him. The sound of their movements was unnatural, like the grinding of metal against the ground. The forest had become a battlefield, and Daniel was no longer just a sniper. He was a soldier fighting for survival. The first robot rounded a corner, its weapons raised. Daniel could hear the whir of its servos as it moved toward him. He was running out of time. He couldn't let them get any closer. He lined up his shot, breathing steadily. With a squeeze of the trigger, the sniper rifle fired, sending a blast of energy into the robot's chest. It staggered, but it didn't fall. Daniel cursed under his breath. The robots were more resilient than he expected. He wasn't just dealing with mindless soldiers now. He was facing technology that could match him blow for blow. But he didn't back down. He was the human sniper. He had faced worse. He knew how to survive. The robots began to close in on him, but Daniel remained calm. He used his cloaking device, becoming one with the jungle, his movements fluid as he outmaneuvered the mechanical warriors. Each shot he took was deliberate, each kill a testament to his precision. The battle had only just begun. The forest was quiet, eerily so, as Daniel Cross moved deeper into the dense jungle. The sun was setting, casting long shadows between the trees, making it harder for him to stay hidden. He could feel the tension in the air. The moment of reckoning was fast approaching. The alien forces, led by Commander Vorsk, had been closing in on him all day, and he knew that the endgame was near. He had outsmarted, outgunned, and outlasted them so far, but now he was facing his greatest challenge yet, the final showdown. Commander Vorsk was relentless. The leader of the alien forces had seen countless battles, fought countless enemies, and yet this human sniper had proven to be his most formidable opponent. The fact that Daniel had taken out so many of his soldiers with such precision had shaken Vorsk's confidence, but he wasn't one to back down. He would have his revenge, and he would make sure this human was brought to justice. Vorsk, along with the last of his soldiers, moved through the jungle with military precision. They were trained for this kind of warfare, equipped with advanced cloaking technology, weapons, and combat skills. But Daniel had proven time and time again that he was no ordinary soldier. The aliens knew they couldn't just rely on brute force. They had to outthink him, outmaneuver him. But that wouldn't be easy. Daniel had become a ghost in the jungle, and every step the aliens took brought them closer to their doom. Daniel wasn't making it easy for them. Using his cloaking device, he silently moved through the underbrush, watching as the aliens advanced. He knew that they were getting closer, and he could almost feel the heat of their weapons on his skin. But he also knew that he still had a few tricks up his sleeve. He had been fighting in this jungle for days, and he had learned its secrets. He knew where to hide, where to strike, and when to retreat. The final confrontation was inevitable. The aliens were getting desperate, and Vorsk was growing impatient. "Find him," Vorsk commanded. "I want that human alive." But as they moved through the jungle, Daniel was always one step ahead. He had already set a series of decoys, false trails, noises, and movements that confused the aliens, making them second-guess their every move. He had turned the jungle into a maze, a place where even the most advanced technology couldn't guarantee victory. Each time the aliens thought they had found him, they were led into a trap. Each time they thought they were close, Daniel would strike, then disappear again. But as the battle raged on, Daniel knew the aliens would eventually catch on. They would find a way to break through his defenses, and when that happened, he would need to be ready. Then, as if on cue, the aliens launched their final assault. They had had enough of the mind games. They weren't going to wait for Daniel to pick them off one by one anymore. They had a plan to flush him out. Vorsk had ordered an orbital bombardment. The ground beneath Daniel's feet rumbled as a flash of light lit up the sky. A massive explosion ripped through the jungle as several heavy laser beams rained down from the sky, turning the trees into ash and creating a fiery hell below. The blast was so intense that it sent shockwaves through the forest, uprooting trees and shattering the ground. The once quiet jungle was now a chaotic battlefield. The bombardment was like a wave of fire, and Daniel was caught in the middle of it. The explosion sent him tumbling through the air, his cloaking device flickering under the intense heat. He scrambled to his feet, heart pounding in his chest. The jungle around him was ablaze, and the smoke stung his eyes. He couldn't stay hidden anymore. The aliens were on him now, and there was no escaping the firestorm that had been unleashed. He heard them before he saw them. The sound of boots crashing through the charred ground, the metallic clank of their advanced armor. Vorsk and his soldiers were closing in. There was no way out. Daniel's mind raced. He needed to think fast. The decoys and tricks that had served him so well before were useless now. The time for stealth was over. It was time for a direct confrontation. With a deep breath, he activated his advanced weaponry. His rifle hummed as it powered up, its targeting system locking onto the first alien soldier that came into view. But before he could fire, a familiar voice cut through the smoke and chaos. "Human," Vorsk called, his voice steady but filled with menace. "You've proven yourself to be a worthy opponent, but this is where your journey ends. Surrender now, and I may show you mercy. Fight, and you will die." Daniel's grip tightened on his weapon as he heard the alien leader's words. Mercy. The aliens had shown no mercy to Earth, no mercy to his people. They had taken everything from him, his family, his home. There was no question of surrender. There was no going back now. He stepped out of the shadows, his eyes narrowing as he faced Vorsk and his remaining soldiers. "I don't surrender," Daniel said, his voice cold. "Not to you. Not to any of you." The battle that followed was intense. The jungle had become a war zone, the air thick with smoke and the smell of burning wood. Laser fire cut through the air, and explosions rocked the ground. Daniel was in his element. He had fought in worse conditions, and he wasn't about to lose now. Vorsk's soldiers moved with precision, but Daniel was faster. He fired his weapon, taking down one of the aliens with a single shot. Then he darted behind a fallen tree for cover as the others returned fire. The exchange was fast, brutal, and unforgiving. Daniel moved from one piece of cover to the next, each time firing with deadly accuracy, forcing the aliens to retreat. But Vorsk wasn't retreating. The commander was a warrior, just as deadly as Daniel, and he wasn't about to let this human defeat him. He advanced on Daniel with a menacing roar, his weapon aimed at the human's heart. The two faced off, the tension in the air thick enough to cut with a knife. It was clear that this was the final confrontation, the battle that would determine who would walk away from this jungle alive. Daniel's pulse quickened. He could feel his body moving on instinct, every part of him attuned to the fight. But Vorsk was strong, his alien technology more advanced. With each swing of his weapon, Daniel had to dodge and weave, using all his skill to stay alive. The fight seemed endless, a whirlwind of action, laser fire, and brutal combat. But in the end, it was Daniel's skill, his determination, and his resilience that won out. With a final burst of energy, he outmaneuvered Vorsk, delivering a powerful blow that sent the alien commander crashing to the ground. Daniel stood over him, his weapon aimed at Vorsk's chest. The jungle had fallen silent once again, the only sound the crackling of the flames that surrounded them. Vorsk looked up at Daniel, his eyes filled with hatred. "You may have won this battle, human, but the war is far from over." Daniel didn't respond. He didn't need to. He had proven his point. The underdog had won. And for now, that was enough. As the smoke cleared and the jungle slowly returned to its eerie stillness, Daniel knew one thing. This was just the beginning. The aliens had underestimated humanity before, but they wouldn't make that mistake again. The air in the jungle was thick with smoke and the scent of burning wood. The battle had taken its toll, and the once lush, vibrant forest now looked like a war zone. Trees broken and blackened by explosions, the ground charred and scorched from the endless barrage of weapons fire. Through the haze, Daniel Cross moved with steady determination, his eyes scanning the remnants of the battlefield. The fight wasn't over yet, but he could feel the tide turning in his favor. The last of the alien soldiers were retreating, and the resistance, the very force they had been fighting to protect, was now within reach. But as the jungle began to fall silent, one thing became clear to Daniel. The war wasn't as simple as just winning battles. It never was. Beneath the surface of this brutal conflict, there was a much deeper cost, a price that wasn't just paid in blood, but in decisions that shaped the very nature of survival. The first sign of this reality came as Daniel's eyes landed on a figure in the distance, an alien soldier struggling to keep up with the retreating squad. It was Bonner, the young soldier who had shown so much hesitation earlier, the one who had once been filled with doubt about the invasion. Daniel could still see the moment when Bonner had looked back, a split second of fear and uncertainty flashing across his face before he pulled the trigger and fell. Now, Bonner was out in the open, his weapon raised in a final attempt to fight back. Daniel's gaze locked onto him, and for a fleeting moment, he hesitated. Bonner wasn't like the others. He was young, barely out of training, and Daniel could see the conflict in his eyes. But war wasn't kind, and the survival of humanity depended on each shot being precise. Yet Daniel couldn't shake the thought of Bonner's internal struggle. He had seen it before. Soldiers torn between duty and morality, caught in the gears of a war they didn't fully understand. Daniel himself had been through that same pain, and it weighed on him now as he watched Bonner make his choice. In that moment, Daniel realized that Bonner wasn't just another soldier in his path. He was a symbol of everything that made this war so tragic. And yet, it was this very tragedy that had driven Daniel to become the sniper he was now. The lone figure who would stop at nothing to protect humanity, no matter the cost. As Bonner moved forward, Daniel knew the young alien soldier had made up his mind. With a look of grim determination, Bonner raised his weapon and took aim. It wasn't just a shot at Daniel. It was an attempt to end the fight, to stop the relentless force that had been picking off the alien soldiers one by one. But he was too late. Before Bonner could fire, Daniel's rifle cracked through the air, and with one clean shot, the young alien soldier collapsed to the ground. It wasn't a clean victory for Daniel. It wasn't a moment of triumph or relief. It was a quiet moment of understanding. Understanding that Bonner had been trapped in a situation he couldn't escape, just like so many others. As the young soldier's body lay still, Daniel couldn't help but feel the weight of it all. This was the cost of survival. This was the reality of war. In the end, it wasn't just about winning. It was about the sacrifices made along the way. But Daniel didn't have time to dwell on it. The battle was far from over. The remaining aliens had regrouped, and Commander Vorsk was still out there, leading the charge. The very heart of this fight rested on taking down the alien leader. It was the only way to ensure the humans could reclaim the base and send the message they needed to send. That humanity would not be defeated. Through the smoke, Daniel could make out the outline of Commander Vorsk. The alien leader stood tall, his weapon raised, and aimed toward Daniel. Vorsk was enraged, his eyes burning with fury as he watched his soldiers fall one by one. He had seen death before, but nothing like this. A single human, one sniper, had turned the tide of battle, and now Vorsk knew that his mission was in jeopardy. But he wasn't ready to give up yet. The war wasn't over, not while he was still standing. "You've fought well, human," Vorsk shouted over the din of battle, his voice dripping with contempt. "But this ends now. Surrender, and I might spare you." Daniel didn't flinch. He had heard these words before, from enemies who thought they could intimidate him. He had heard them from the aliens who had killed his family, who had taken everything from him. There was no surrender. There was only the fight for survival. "No surrender," Daniel muttered under his breath, his eyes narrowing as he aimed his rifle. Vorsk's face twisted with rage as he raised his weapon to strike. "Then you will die just like the rest." The final battle unfolded with the fury of two opposing forces colliding in the heart of the jungle. Vorsk and his soldiers pushed forward, but Daniel was ready. With a quick movement, he activated his cloaking device and disappeared into the smoke. The aliens were left confused, trying to track him in the chaos. But Daniel was a shadow in the night, moving with precision and skill that even the most advanced alien technology couldn't predict. The sound of laser fire filled the air as Daniel picked off one soldier after another, his shots ringing out with deadly accuracy. But Vorsk was not to be outdone. The alien commander fought like a beast, pushing forward and using his advanced technology to try and flesh Daniel out. But Daniel was faster. He used every trick in his arsenal, decoys, distractions, and even the environment itself, to outwit Vorsk's forces. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Daniel found himself face to face with Vorsk. The alien commander stood tall, his weapon aimed directly at Daniel. The final showdown was about to begin. Vorsk spoke again, his voice full of venom. "You're nothing but a thorn in my side, human. You'll never win." But Daniel's response was simple. He didn't need to say anything. The final moment arrived with the crack of his rifle. The shot rang out, cutting through the air like a deadly whisper. Vorsk's body collapsed to the ground with a final, resounding thud. The alien commander was dead. With Vorsk's death, the last of the alien forces crumbled. The remaining soldiers, now leaderless and defeated, turned and fled into the jungle, their morale shattered. The resistance, led by Daniel's efforts, had reclaimed the base. The mission was a success. Humanity had triumphed. But as Daniel stood over the body of Commander Vorsk, he felt no joy, no celebration. The cost of victory had been too great. Bonner's death weighed heavily on his mind, and he knew that there would be many more battles ahead. The war was far from over, and there would be more sacrifices to make. Yet, even in the face of these harsh realities, Daniel knew that his actions had sent a message. Humanity was strong. Humanity was resilient. And no matter how many battles they fought, they would never give up. They had a new legend now, a legend that would echo across the galaxy. Never mess with a human sniper. The Resistance had won, and humanity had proven its worth. But the war was far from over. The fight for survival would continue, and Daniel Cross would be there, ready for whatever came next. The victory was hard-earned, and the relief that followed felt almost hollow. The last of the alien invaders had been driven back, their forces scattered and broken. The jungle that had once been lush and green now lay in ruins, a testament to the fierce battle that had taken place. Humanity had won the day, but the cost was steep. As the last few surviving Resistance fighters regrouped, their faces showed signs of exhaustion, relief, and loss. They had fought to protect their planet, to save everything they loved, but they had also sacrificed so much. Sergeant Daniel Cross, the sniper who had become the legend, stood apart from the others, his back to the broken landscape. He didn't celebrate, didn't join in the cheers. There were no high fives or pats on the back for him. He was alone in his thoughts, his gaze fixed on the horizon. The battle was over, but the war was far from finished. The fight had taken its toll on him, just as it had on everyone else. The memories of fallen soldiers, of those who had paid the ultimate price, haunted him. He looked down at his hands, which were still covered in the dirt and blood of the battlefield. He had killed, and he had watched others die. This wasn't just another mission. It was personal. The aliens who had invaded Earth had taken everything from him. And now, in the end, it had been up to him to stop them. But at what cost? How much of his humanity had he lost along the way? As he sat down on a fallen log, Daniel thought back to the early days of the invasion. He remembered the panic, the uncertainty, the feeling that humanity was on the brink of extinction. But as the Resistance began to fight back, something shifted. Daniel had become a symbol of humanity's strength, of its unyielding resolve. He had been the lone wolf, the sniper who struck fear into the hearts of the alien invaders. His name had become known across the battlefield, whispered in hushed tones by both humans and aliens alike. To the Resistance, he was a hero. To the aliens, he was a nightmare. But that title came with a heavy burden. Daniel had been a soldier, yes, but he was also a man who had lost his family, his home, his peace. The weight of all those losses pressed down on him now, and it wasn't something he could shake off. It wasn't just about surviving the war anymore. It was about carrying the memory of those who had fallen, and making sure their sacrifice meant something. Daniel had become the symbol of the fight for Earth, and now, with the alien forces in retreat, the responsibility weighed heavily on his shoulders. He stood up, wiping the dirt from his uniform, and looked around at the men and women who had fought alongside him. They were gathering their gear, checking their weapons, making sure the area was secure. They had won the battle, but they knew the war wasn't over. The aliens would regroup, and they would come back. It was just a matter of time. But Daniel didn't want to think about that right now. He wanted to honor the fallen. He walked over to the makeshift memorial where the bodies of the dead Resistance fighters were laid out. Some were still covered in blood, others had already been cleaned, their faces showing the quiet dignity of those who had given everything. Daniel stood in silence for a moment, offering a silent prayer for their souls. Among the dead was Bonner, the young alien soldier who had struggled with the moral weight of the invasion. Bonner's death had been a turning point for Daniel. It had reminded him of the human cost of war, of the sacrifices that were made not only by soldiers, but by civilians as well. There were no real winners in war, only survivors, and the ones who survived had to live with the consequences. The celebration was short-lived. The Resistance knew there was no time for resting on their laurels. They had won a significant victory, but they couldn't afford to relax. There was still much work to be done, and the aliens would not give up easily. But for a brief moment, there was a sense of relief. The weight of the battle was behind them, and they had pushed back the invaders. Humanity had proven it wasn't to be underestimated. Daniel's thoughts shifted again. There was something he needed to do. He made his way to the command center, where the leaders of the resistance were gathering. They had to send a message. They had to send it to the Galactic Council, to the rest of the galaxy. They had to let them know that Earth was not to be taken lightly. Inside the command center, the atmosphere was tense. The leaders were gathered around a table, discussing their next steps. Daniel approached them, his eyes steely with determination. They looked up, recognizing him immediately. The silence in the room was deafening as he stepped forward. "Commander," Daniel said, his voice calm but firm, "it's time we send them a message. We need to let them know that Earth is not a target. We're not some backwater planet to be wiped out. We fight back. We survive." The commander nodded. "I agree. But how do we do it? The Galactic Council doesn't listen to us. They think of us as nothing." Daniel's eyes narrowed. "Then we make them listen. We send them a message they can't ignore." With a few quick commands, the resistance had access to the communication network. They initiated a transmission to the Galactic Council, their message broadcast across the galaxy for all to hear. Daniel stood in front of the camera, his expression unwavering. "This is Sergeant Daniel Cross of the Earth Resistance," he began. "To the Galactic Council, and all those who think Earth is a weak, defenseless planet, I have one message for you. Never underestimate the strength of humanity. We fought, we bled, and we've won. This is our home, and we'll fight for it, no matter the cost. Earth is not to be trifled with. We will defend ourselves, and we will never surrender." His words were sharp, every syllable a declaration of Earth's resilience. The transmission ended, but the message would live on. It would echo through the galaxy, a warning to anyone who would dare threaten Earth again. As the transmission faded, Daniel walked to the observation deck, his gaze turning to the stars above. The galaxy stretched out before him, a vast expanse of unknowns and dangers. The war was far from over. The Galactic Council would respond. They would retaliate. But for now, humanity had sent its message loud and clear. Earth was not to be underestimated. Earth would survive. Daniel's thoughts drifted to the future. He knew there would be more battles to fight. The aliens would come again, and they would come harder. But he also knew that humanity had something the aliens didn't, something they could never understand. It was the human spirit, the drive to survive, to protect, and to never give up. Daniel looked up at the stars, a faint smile crossing his face. Humanity was ready, ready for whatever came next. The fight wasn't over, but with each victory, Earth was becoming stronger, more united, and more determined. The legacy of that sniper, Sergeant Daniel Cross, would live on. His actions had inspired a generation, and as he watched the stars, he knew that humanity's strength would shine through the darkness, no matter what the future held. The story of Earth's resistance had just begun, and Daniel Cross would be there, leading the charge. The battle was far from over, but humanity had proven that it was a force to be reckoned with. The stars above seemed brighter now, as if in acknowledgement of Earth's unwavering spirit. And as Daniel stood there, looking at them, he knew that no matter what challenges awaited, humanity would face them head-on, together.